March 15, 2005. Tommy Rodriguez wiped grease from his hands as he surveyed the old Brookfield fire station. The city had hired his garage to clear out the abandoned building before demolition. Statio. Just old equipment and paperwork, the city clerk had told him. Take what you want, dump the rest. Tommy pushed open the heavy metal door to the equipment bay. Dust particles danced in the afternoon sunlight streaming through grimy windows. 3 fire trucks sat covered in tarps, their red paint faded and tires flat. He walked past them toward the back office where Chief Patterson had worked. The office door creaked open. Papers scattered across the floor, filing cabinets left open, everything frozen in time since 1989. Tommy began loading boxes of old reports into his truck when something caught his eye behind the chief's desk. A loose floorboard. He knelt down and pried it up with his crowbar. Inside the hidden compartment lay a metal lockbox, its surface tarnished but intact. Tommy lifted it out, surprised by its weight. The lock had rusted solid. Back at his garage, Tommy broke the lock with bolt cutters. Inside he found documents that made his blood run cold. Bank statements showing deposits of $50,000 monthly, invoices for construction materials never delivered to the fire department, and contracts with companies that didn't exist. But the most shocking discovery was a handwritten letter dated October 12, 1989, 3 days before Chief Patterson disappeared. If something happens to me, know that I tried to stop them. The insurance money from the warehouse fires isn't going where it should. Mayor Jameson and Councilman Burke are stealing from the city. I have proof. They know I know. Sarah, if you're reading this, I love you. Tell the kids their father fought for what was right. Bill. Tommy stared at the letter. Everyone in Brookfield remembered the warehouse fires of 1988 and 1989. 7 major blazes in industrial buildings, all ruled accidental. The insurance payouts had funded new city projects, including the Civic Center and library expansion. Chief Patterson had 3 children and a wife named Sarah. After his disappearance, she'd moved away with the kids. The official investigation concluded he'd suffered a mental breakdown and left voluntarily. No evidence of foul play was ever found. Tommy picked up the phone and dialed the Brookfield Police Department. Detective Martinez speaking. Detective, this is Tommy Rodriguez. I own Rodriguez Auto Repair on Main Street. I found something at the old fire station you need to see. An hour later, Detective Elena Martinez stood in Tommy's garage, examining the contents of the lockbox. She was 38, had joined the department in 1995, and remembered hearing about the Patterson case during training. These bank statements show deposits from Brookfield Municipal account, she said, studying the papers. But why would the fire chief have personal accounts receiving city money? Tommy handed her the letter. This explains everything. Martinez read it twice. Mayor Jameson died in 1998. Natural causes. But Councilman Burke is still alive. He's retired but lives here in town. She photographed every document before sealing them in evidence bags. Mr. Rodriguez, I need you to keep this discovery confidential while we investigate. Can you do that? Of course. But what about the chief's family? Don't they deserve to know? They will. But first we need to verify these allegations. If Chief Patterson was murdered because he discovered corruption, his killers may still be alive. Martinez returned to the station and pulled the Patterson case file. The original detective, Frank Morrison, had retired in 2000. His notes showed a thorough but ultimately fruitless investigation. Patterson's car was found at the bus station. Security cameras showed him boarding a Greyhound to Chicago. The trail went cold there, but now Martinez wondered if those cameras had captured someone else entirely. She called her partner, Detective James Chen. Jim, remember that cold case training seminar about missing persons? Time to put it to use. Chen arrived within minutes. At 42, he was a methodical investigator who specialized in financial crimes. What do we have? Martinez briefed him on Tommy's discovery. Chen whistled low as he examined the bank statements. These deposits match the insurance payouts from those warehouse fires. See here? October 1988. $50,000 deposit 3 days after the Miller warehouse fire. January 1989. Another $50,000 after the Riverside storage fire. 7 warehouses burned, Martinez said. Insurance companies paid out over $2 million to the city for damaged equipment and response costs. And if Patterson discovered the money was being diverted, he became a liability. Chen opened his laptop and began searching property records. Let's see what projects Mayor Jameson and Councilman Burke approved with those insurance funds. The records showed construction contracts awarded to companies that existed only on paper: Brookfield Construction, LLC, Municipal Services, Inc., and Riverside Development Corp. All shared the same registered address, a post office box that had been closed since 1990. Ghost companies, Martinez said. They created fake businesses to justify the expenditures. And pocketed the money, Chen finished. But Chief Patterson figured it out. Martinez studied Patterson's photograph in the case file. He was 45 when he disappeared, married 23 years, father of 3 teenagers. By all accounts, he was dedicated to his job and family. Frank Morrison interviewed everyone at the fire department. What did they tell him? Chen flipped through witness statements. Most said Patterson had been acting strange in his final weeks, staying late at the office, making phone calls, asking unusual questions about city budgets. He was investigating on his own, and probably gathering evidence. Martinez made a decision. Tomorrow we visit Councilman Burke. Time to see how he reacts to some pointed questions about 1989. As the sun set over Brookfield, Tommy Rodriguez locked his garage and drove home. He couldn't stop thinking about Chief Patterson's letter. A man had died for trying to do the right thing. 16 years later, his secret was finally coming to light. But in a small town where powerful people had buried the truth once before, Tommy wondered if justice would finally be served, or if some secrets were meant to stay hidden forever. The investigation into Fire Chief William Patterson's disappearance was about to begin again. The original investigation. The next morning, Detective Martinez drove to the Brookfield Public Library to research the original case. The local newspaper archives painted a picture of a community in shock. Fire Chief Vanishes, read the headline, from October 16, 1989. According to the articles, Patterson had worked late on October 15, 1989. His wife Sarah expected him home by 8 p.m., but he never arrived. She called the fire station at 10 p.m., no answer. His assistant chief, Robert Walsh, found the station empty the next morning with Patterson's office door open and lights still on. Patterson's 1987 Ford pickup was discovered at the Greyhound station downtown. A ticket stub in his wallet showed he'd purchased passage to Chicago. The bus driver remembered a man matching Patterson's description, boarding alone with a single duffel bag. Martinez photographed the newspaper coverage, then drove to the records department at City Hall. She needed to review the insurance claims from the warehouse fires. The files were stored in the basement. Boxes of documents dating back decades lined metal shelves. Martinez found the 1988 to 1989 fire reports and began copying them methodically. 7 warehouse fires in 14 months. All occurred between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. All were ruled accidental, caused by electrical malfunctions or heating equipment failures. The insurance payouts totaled $2.3 million to cover city equipment damage and response costs. But studying the reports more carefully, Martinez noticed inconsistencies. The Miller Warehouse fire report listed damage to 3 fire trucks, but maintenance records showed those same trucks in service for months after the alleged damage. The Riverside storage fire claimed destruction of breathing apparatus worth $40,000, but inventory logs showed no missing equipment. Fraudulent claims, Martinez muttered. The city had billed insurance companies for damages that never occurred. Her phone buzzed. Detective Chen was calling from the police station. Elena, I found Frank Morrison's personal notes on the Patterson case. He kept them at home after retirement. His widow brought them in this morning. What do they say? Morrison suspected Patterson didn't leave voluntarily. He found discrepancies in the bus station story. Martinez returned to the station immediately. Chen spread Morrison's handwritten notes across the conference table. Look at this. Chen pointed to an entry dated November 3, 1989. Morrison interviewed the bus driver 3 times. Each time, the driver's description of the passenger changed slightly. First he said the man wore a blue jacket, then brown, then he couldn't remember. Coached testimony? Gets better. Morrison checked hotel records in Chicago. No William Patterson registered anywhere in the week following his disappearance. Martinez studied a photograph paper-clipped to Morrison's notes. It showed Patterson's pickup truck at the bus station. Did Morrison process the vehicle for evidence? Yes, but here's the interesting part. Chen flipped to another page. No fingerprints on the steering wheel or door handles. The truck had been wiped clean. Patterson wouldn't clean his own truck before abandoning it. Morrison thought the same thing. His notes suggest Patterson was murdered and his body disposed of, with the bus station discovery staged to make it look like he fled. Martinez felt pieces clicking together. Who had access to Patterson's truck? Chen consulted the witness statements. His wife, 3 kids, and several firefighters who occasionally borrowed it for personal errands. But here's the key detail. Assistant Chief Robert Walsh had spare keys to all department vehicles. Where's Walsh now? Retired in 2001. Lives on the other side of town. Martinez made another discovery in Morrison's notes. Frank interviewed Mayor Jameson and Councilman Burke separately in December 1989. Both claimed minimal interaction with Chief Patterson, but Morrison discovered they'd met with him privately on October 10, 1989, just 5 days before his disappearance. What was the meeting about? According to city records, budget discussions for the following year. But Morrison noted both men seemed nervous during interviews and gave vague, inconsistent answers about the meeting's details. Chen opened his laptop and pulled up current addresses. Councilman Burke lives at 425 Oak Street, retired 5 years ago but still attends city council meetings occasionally. And Robert Walsh? 1247 Pine Ridge Drive. According to DMV records, he drives a blue pickup truck registered in 2003. Martinez studied Morrison's final notes, dated February 1990. Investigation suspended due to lack of evidence. Personal belief. Chief Patterson discovered criminal activity involving city officials. Was murdered to prevent exposure. Recommend case remain open pending new evidence. Morrison knew, Martinez said. He couldn't prove it, but he knew Patterson was killed. Chen nodded. The question is, can we prove it 16 years later? Martinez gathered the documents. We start with Burke and Walsh. See how they react to questions about the warehouse fires and insurance claims. What about the mayor? Jameson's dead, but maybe his records survived. Good idea. Check probate court for his estate records, and pull financial information on Burke and Walsh for 1989 through 1991. If they received kickbacks from the insurance fraud, there might be traces. As they prepared to leave, Chen asked, "What's our probable cause for questioning Burke and Walsh?" Martinez held up Tommy Rodriguez's photographs of the hidden documents. A citizen found potential evidence of municipal fraud and conspiracy to commit murder. We're following up on credible allegations. And if they lawyer up, then we know we're on the right track. Martinez drove toward Oak Street, thinking about Frank Morrison's dedication to finding the truth. He'd suspected corruption and murder but lacked the evidence to prove it. Now, 16 years later, Chief Patterson's own words might finally expose his killers. But in a town where powerful people had successfully buried the truth for over a decade, Martinez wondered what other secrets lay hidden, and how far those responsible would go to keep them that way. The afternoon sun cast long shadows as she pulled up outside Councilman Burke's house. Time to see if an old man's conscience would finally crack under pressure. Confronting the past councilman, Vincent Burke lived in a modest 2-story home with a well-maintained garden. At 73, he moved slowly but still projected the authority that had defined his 30-year political career. He answered the door wearing a cardigan and reading glasses. "Detective Martinez, Brookfield Police. I'd like to ask you some questions about events from 1989. Burke's expression remained neutral, but Martinez noticed his grip tighten on the door handle. "What kind of events?" "The disappearance of Fire Chief William Patterson and the warehouse fires that occurred during that period." "That was a long time ago. I'm not sure I can help you." May I come in?" "This won't take long." Burke hesitated, then stepped aside. His living room was filled with photographs from his political career, handshakes with mayors, ribbon cuttings, campaign events. Martinez noticed none showed him with Chief Patterson. Mr. Burke, city records show you met privately with Chief Patterson on October 10, 1989. What was discussed in that meeting? I met with many department heads over the years. Budget matters, usually. Martinez opened her notepad. This meeting occurred just 5 days before Chief Patterson disappeared. Don't you find that timing significant? Burke shifted in his armchair. Chief Patterson was under significant stress in his final weeks. His behavior had become erratic. Erratic how? Asking unusual questions. Making accusations. Some of us wondered if he was having personal problems. Martinez leaned forward. What kind of accusations? Nothing specific. He seemed suspicious of routine city business, budget allocations, construction contracts, insurance procedures. Did he have reason to be suspicious? Burke's face flushed. Detective, I served this community for 3 decades with integrity. If you're implying otherwise, Martinez pulled out photographs of the documents Tommy Rodriguez had discovered. Mr. Burke, we found these hidden in Chief Patterson's office. She showed him the bank statements first. Burke studied them without expression, but she noticed his hands trembling slightly. These show large monthly deposits to accounts connected to the fire department. Can you explain them? I have no knowledge of Chief Patterson's personal finances. Martinez showed him the insurance invoices next. These are claims for equipment damage that apparently never occurred. The fire department billed insurance companies for trucks and equipment that remained in service. Burke stood up abruptly. Detective, I think you should speak with my attorney before continuing this conversation. That's your right, Mr. Burke. But I should mention we also found this. She handed him Chief Patterson's letter. Burke read it twice, his face growing pale. This appears to be some sort of accusation against Mayor Jameson and myself. Che, did Chief Patterson ever confront you directly about insurance fraud? Burke was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Detective, what happened in 1989 was complicated. Chief Patterson misunderstood certain financial arrangements. What kind of arrangements? The insurance money was used for legitimate city projects. Everything was properly authorized. Martinez studied Burke's body language. But Chief Patterson didn't think so. Chief Patterson was idealistic. He didn't understand the practical realities of municipal finance. So you admit he discovered something? Burke realized his mistake immediately. I didn't say that. Mr. Burke, where were you on the evening of October 15, 1989? I have no idea. That was 16 years ago. Martinez made notes while Burke watched nervously. We'll be conducting a thorough review of all city financial records from that period. If there's anything else you'd like to tell me, now would be the time. Burke walked to the window and stared at his garden. Detective, I'm 73 years old. I've served this community my entire adult life. Whatever mistakes may have been made, they were made with good intentions. What mistakes, Mr. Burke? He turned back to face her. I think our conversation is over. Martinez left her business card on the coffee table. If you change your mind about talking, please call me. Driving away, Martinez felt the satisfaction of a breakthrough. Burke hadn't denied the allegations directly, and his admission that Patterson misunderstood certain financial arrangements was essentially a confession that something improper had occurred. Her next stop was Pine Ridge Drive to interview Robert Walsh. Walsh lived in a newer subdivision on the outskirts of town. His blue pickup sat in the driveway next to a well-equipped woodworking shop in the garage. He answered the door in work clothes, sawdust on his hands. Mr. Walsh? Detective Martinez, Brookfield Police. I'd like to ask you about Chief Patterson's disappearance. Walsh's reaction was immediate and telling. His face went white, and he gripped the doorframe for support. What about Chief Patterson? New evidence has come to light. May I come in? Walsh led her to a kitchen table covered with woodworking plans. I told the original detective everything I knew. Martinez pulled out her notepad. You were the last person to see Chief Patterson alive. Tell me about October 15, 1989. Chief worked late that night. I left around 6 p.m. He said he had paperwork to finish. Did he seem upset or worried about anything? Walsh hesitated. He'd been acting strange for weeks, staying late, making phone calls, asking questions about city contracts. What kind of questions? He wanted to know why certain construction companies got no-bid contracts, why insurance claims were processed so quickly. Things that weren't really fire department business. Martinez showed Walsh the hidden documents. His reaction was even stronger than Burke's. He actually recoiled from the photographs. Have you seen these before? No, I don't know what they are. They were hidden in Chief Patterson's office. They suggest municipal fraud involving insurance claims from warehouse fires. Walsh stood up and walked to the sink, his back to Martinez. The warehouse fires were all ruled accidental, but the insurance claims appear to be fraudulent. Equipment that was never damaged, trucks that remained in service. I wouldn't know about insurance matters. Martinez pressed harder. Mr. Walsh, you had keys to all department vehicles. Did you ever borrow Chief Patterson's truck? Walsh spun around. What are you implying? Chief Patterson's truck was found at the bus station with no fingerprints. Someone had wiped it clean. Maybe the chief cleaned it himself. Why would he do that if he was planning to abandon it? Walsh sat back down, his hands shaking. Detective, I served as a firefighter for 28 years. I never did anything to hurt Chief Patterson. But you knew about the insurance fraud? The question hung in the air. Walsh stared at the table for nearly a minute before answering. Some of us suspected something wasn't right. The warehouse fires, the quick insurance payments, the construction contracts that seemed too convenient. Did you discuss this with Chief Patterson? He asked me about it once. Wanted to know if I'd noticed anything unusual about the fire reports. What did you tell him? The truth, that some details seemed wrong. Equipment damage that I couldn't verify. Martinez leaned forward. What happened after you told him that? Walsh's voice dropped to almost a whisper. He started investigating on his own. Staying late, going through files, making copies of documents. And then he disappeared. Yes. Mr. Walsh, do you believe Chief Patterson left town voluntarily? Walsh met her eyes for the first time during the interview. No, Detective, I don't. The admission sent chills through Martinez. What do you think happened to him? Walsh looked away again. I think he found out too much. And I think some very powerful people decided he was a problem that needed to be solved. Are you saying Chief Patterson was murdered? Walsh nodded slowly. That's exactly what I'm saying. The network exposed Detective Martinez returned to the station energized by Walsh's confession. She found Detective Chen at his computer, surrounded by printouts of financial records. Jim, Walsh just admitted he believes Patterson was murdered, and Burke practically confessed to insurance fraud. Chen looked up from his screen. Perfect timing. I found the smoking gun. He spread bank statements across his desk. I pulled records for Burke, Walsh, and Mayor Jameson from 1989 through 1992. Look at these deposit patterns. Martinez studied the documents. Each man had received regular cash deposits ranging from $5,000 to $10,000, always within days of insurance payments to the city. Kickbacks, Martinez said. They were splitting the stolen insurance money. It gets better. I traced the ghost companies that received the construction contracts. All three were incorporated by the same lawyer, Harold Kramer. He's still practicing in town. Martinez grabbed her jacket. Let's pay Mr. Kramer a visit. The law office of Kramer and Associates occupied the second floor of a historic building downtown. Harold Kramer was in his early 70s, with silver hair and expensive suits. He received the detectives in a conference room lined with law books. Gentlemen, how can I help you today? Martinez showed him corporate filings for Brookfield Construction LLC, Municipal Services Inc., and Riverside Development Corp. Mr. Kramer, you incorporated these companies in 1988. What services did they provide? Kramer examined the documents carefully. This was nearly 20 years ago. I'd have to review my files. Take your time, Chen said. We'll wait. D'accord. Kramer disappeared for 10 minutes, then returned with a thick folder. I remember now. These were consulting companies that provided services to the city. What kind of consulting? Construction oversight, equipment procurement, administrative services. Martinez pulled out the insurance fraud evidence. Mr. Kramer, these companies billed the city for millions of dollars in services that were never provided. Were you aware of this? Kramer's professional demeanor cracked slightly. I only handled the incorporation paperwork. I wasn't involved in their day-to-day operations. Who were the principals of these companies? I'm afraid that information is protected by attorney-client privilege. Chen leaned forward. Mr. Kramer, we're investigating a murder. Attorney-client privilege doesn't apply to criminal conspiracies. Murder? Who was murdered? Martinez placed Chief Patterson's photograph on the table. Fire Chief William Patterson. He discovered the insurance fraud and was killed to keep him quiet. Kramer stared at the photograph for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was strained. Chief Patterson was a good man. If something happened to him, who owned the shell companies, Mr. Kramer? The lawyer walked to his window and looked down at the street below. Mayor Jameson, Councilman Burke, and Assistant Fire Chief Walsh were the principals. But they used nominee shareholders to hide their involvement. How did the scheme work? Kramer returned to his chair, looking suddenly older. The warehouse fires were set deliberately. The fire department would respond, then file inflated insurance claims for equipment damage that never occurred. The insurance companies paid the city, which then hired the shell companies for fake construction projects. The money was funneled back to the conspirators. Martinez felt her pulse quicken. The warehouse fires were arson? 7 warehouses over 14 months. All empty buildings in industrial areas. No one was supposed to get hurt. But Chief Patterson figured it out. Kramer nodded. He started asking questions about response procedures, equipment damage reports, insurance claims. Mayor Jameson called me in October 1989, said Patterson was becoming a problem. What did you advise? I told them to shut down the operation immediately. The money they'd already stolen was enough, but they were greedy. Chen took notes as Kramer continued. Jameson and Burke met with Patterson on October 10th, trying to convince him to stay quiet. They offered to cut him in on the scheme. Patterson refused? Chief Patterson was incorruptible. He told them he was going to the state police with evidence of fraud and arson. Martinez leaned forward. So they killed him. Kramer was quiet for nearly a minute. I don't have direct knowledge of what happened to Chief Patterson. But 2 days after he disappeared, Jameson called me to dissolve the shell companies. Mr. Kramer, are you willing to testify about this conspiracy? The lawyer looked at his hands. Detective, I'm 71 years old. I've practiced law in this town for 45 years. What you're asking me to do? We're asking you to help us solve a murder. Kramer walked to his safe and removed a manila envelope. I kept copies of all the incorporation documents, bank records, and contracts. Everything is here. He handed the envelope to Martinez. I always suspected something terrible happened to Chief Patterson. If these documents can help you find his killers, then I'll testify. Back at the station, Martinez and Chen spread Kramer's evidence across the conference table. The paper trail was damning. Shell companies, inflated insurance claims, and bank records showing the flow of stolen money. We have conspiracy, fraud, and arson, Chen said. But we still need evidence of murder. Martinez studied the timeline. Patterson disappeared October 15th. Jameson called Kramer to dissolve the companies October 17th. They moved fast to cover their tracks. Walsh admitted he thinks Patterson was murdered. Maybe he knows more than he's telling. Time for another conversation with Mr. Walsh. As they prepared to leave, Martinez's phone rang. It was Tommy Rodriguez from the auto repair shop. Detective, I found something else at the fire station, hidden behind some old equipment. You need to see this. 20 minutes later, Martinez and Chen stood in Tommy's garage examining a blood-stained fire axe. A small evidence tag was still attached. It had been removed from the station during the original investigation in 1989. Frank Morrison collected this as potential evidence, Martinez said, reading the tag. But why was it hidden at the station instead of logged into evidence? Chen photographed the axe from multiple angles. Someone removed it from police custody and hid it back at the fire station. Someone with access to both locations. They looked at each other with the same realization. Walsh. Martinez called the crime lab. I need DNA testing and blood analysis on a piece of evidence from the Patterson case. Priority 1. As they waited for the lab technicians, Tommy pointed to something else he'd found, a metal toolbox hidden in the same location as the axe. Inside were more documents, Handwritten notes in Chief Patterson's handwriting detailing his investigation into the warehouse fires, photographs of insurance claims, and bank statements showing suspicious transactions. But the most significant discovery was Chief Patterson's personal calendar. His final entry, dated October 15, 1989, read, "Meeting Walsh, 10 p.m. station. Have evidence. Going to state police tomorrow." Martinez showed the entry to Chen. Patterson trusted Walsh. He arranged to meet with him the night he disappeared, to share his evidence before going to the authorities. But Walsh was part of the conspiracy. He knew Patterson had enough evidence to destroy them all. Chen nodded grimly. So he killed his own chief to protect the scheme. The pieces of the 16-year-old puzzle were finally falling into place. Fire Chief William Patterson had been murdered by people he trusted, and his body hidden to make it look like he'd fled town voluntarily. Now Martinez and Chen had to prove it in court, and find out what Walsh and his co-conspirators had done with Chief Patterson's remains. The confrontation. Armed with new evidence, Detective Martinez decided to confront Robert Walsh directly. She and Detective Chen drove to Pine Ridge Drive that evening, knowing Walsh would likely be home from his woodworking activities. Walsh answered the door in work clothes, sawdust still clinging to his flannel shirt. His expression changed immediately when he saw both detectives. "Mr. Walsh, we need to talk. We've discovered additional evidence about Chief Patterson's disappearance." Walsh stepped back, allowing them inside. His kitchen table was covered with wood-stained samples, but Martinez noticed his hands shaking as he cleared them away. "What kind of evidence?" Martinez placed the blood-stained axe photograph on the table. Walsh stared at it, his face draining of color. "This fire axe was removed from police evidence in 1989. We found it hidden at Station 19. Can you explain how it got there?" Walsh gripped the back of his chair. I don't know anything about that." Chen opened a folder containing Chief Patterson's calendar. "Chief Patterson's final entry shows he arranged to meet with you at the fire station on October 15, 1989, at 10 p.m. You told us you left at 6 p.m. that day. I must have forgotten about the meeting." Martinez leaned forward. "Mr. Walsh?" Chief Patterson wrote that he had evidence and planned to contact state police the next morning. He trusted you enough to share that evidence before going to the authorities. Walsh sat down heavily, his breathing labored. "You don't understand the situation we were in. Then help us understand." Walsh was quiet for nearly 2 minutes, staring at the table. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. "Chief Patterson called me around 8 p.m. that night, said he'd found documents proving the warehouse fires were arson, and the insurance claims were fraudulent. He wanted me to see the evidence before he turned it over to state police." "So you met him at the station?" Walsh nodded slowly. "I got there around 9:45. Chief Patterson was in his office, papers spread everywhere. He showed me bank statements, insurance invoices, contracts with fake companies." Chen took notes as Walsh continued. "He said Mayor Jameson and Councilman Burke had offered to cut him in on the scheme, but he'd refused. He was going to expose everything." "What did you tell him?" Walsh's voice cracked. "I tried to convince him to reconsider. The scheme was winding down anyway. No one else would get hurt." Martinez studied Walsh's body language, but Chief Patterson refused to stay quiet. He said he'd taken an oath to serve and protect. That included protecting the city from corruption and theft. "So what happened next?" Walsh stood up and walked to the window, his back to the detectives. "We argued. I told him he was being naive, that he didn't understand how things really worked in city government. And then?" Walsh's shoulders shook. "Chief Patterson said he was disappointed in me, that he'd trusted me like a brother, and I'd betrayed that trust." Martinez waited, knowing Walsh was approaching the crucial moment. "I lost my temper. I grabbed the fire axe from the emergency equipment rack. I just meant to scare him, make him listen to reason. But something went wrong." Walsh turned back to face them, tears in his eyes. "Chief Patterson tried to grab the evidence and run. We struggled. The axe, it caught him in the head." The confession hit the room like a physical blow. Chen continued taking notes while Martinez processed the admission. "Chief Patterson died instantly?" Walsh nodded. "There was so much blood. I panicked." "What did you do with his body?" "I called Mayor Jameson. He arrived with Councilman Burke around midnight. They said we had to make it look like Chief Patterson had left town voluntarily. Martinez felt sick but pressed on. How? Jameson knew someone at the bus station who would create a false record. We cleaned up the blood, put Chief Patterson's body in his pickup truck, and drove it to the industrial area near the river. Where exactly? Walsh gave them detailed directions to an abandoned quarry outside town. We weighted the body and submerged it in the deepest part of the quarry. Then we drove the truck to the bus station and staged the scene. Chen looked up from his notes. The blood-stained axe? I hid it at the station, thinking I'd dispose of it later. But Detective Morrison collected it as evidence before I could retrieve it. So you removed it from police custody? Walsh nodded. I still had access to the evidence room. I took the axe and hid it back at the station. Martinez stood up. Robert Walsh, you're under arrest for the murder of Fire Chief William Patterson. As Chen read Walsh the Miranda rights, Martinez called for backup and crime scene technicians. They would need to search the quarry for remains and process Walsh's house for additional evidence. Walsh didn't resist as they placed him in handcuffs. Detective, I want you to know I've regretted what happened every day for 16 years. Chief Patterson was a good man who deserved better. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Jameson and Burke said they'd make sure I went down for everything if I talked. After Jameson died in 1998, Burke reminded me the statute of limitations hadn't run out on murder. Back at the station, Walsh waived his right to an attorney and provided a detailed written confession. He described the insurance fraud scheme, the warehouse arsons, and the events leading to Chief Patterson's death. The 7 warehouse fires were set by a professional arsonist Jameson hired from Chicago. We knew the buildings would be empty. They were all scheduled for demolition anyway. How much money was stolen? About $1.8 million over the 2-year period. Each of us received roughly $400,000. Martinez reviewed the confession carefully. What happened to the money? I used mine to buy my house and set up the woodworking business. Jameson invested his in real estate. Burke put his in offshore accounts. And now? Walsh sighed. I'll cooperate fully with recovering Chief Patterson's remains and making restitution to his family. It's the least I can do. As news of Walsh's arrest spread through Brookfield, Martinez felt the satisfaction of solving a cold case that had haunted the community for 16 years. But she also felt sadness for the family of Chief Patterson, who would finally learn the truth about their husband and father's fate. The next phase of the investigation would involve recovering the chief's remains from the quarry and building cases against the surviving co-conspirators. Vincent Burke would face charges as an accessory to murder, while the families of Mayor Jameson would have to confront their patriarch's criminal legacy. Fire Chief William Patterson had died trying to expose corruption and protect his community. 16 years later, his courage would finally be vindicated, and his killers would face justice. Recovery and revelation. The next morning, a joint team from the Brookfield Police Department, state investigators, and underwater recovery specialists assembled at the abandoned quarry Walsh had described. The location was 15 miles east of town, accessed by an overgrown dirt road that hadn't seen traffic in years. Detective Martinez stood at the quarry's edge, watching dive teams prepare their equipment. Detective Chen joined her, reviewing Walsh's detailed confession. According to this, they weighted the body with concrete blocks and submerged it in the northwest section, approximately 40 feet deep. The lead diver, Sergeant Mike Thompson from the state police, approached them. Water's murky, but we have sonar equipment. If there's anything down there, we'll find it. Martinez watched the divers descend into the dark water. After 16 years, she wondered what condition any remains might be in. But Chief Patterson's family deserved answers, and physical evidence would strengthen their case against Burke. 2 hours later, Thompson surfaced and signaled to shore. We found something. Large object wrapped in tarp, weighted down with concrete blocks, exactly where Walsh said it would be. The recovery took another hour. As the team carefully brought the remains to shore, Martinez felt the weight of finally solving the mystery that had haunted Brookfield since 1989. The county coroner, Dr. Sarah Kim, examined the remains on site. Adult male, approximately 6 feet tall, consistent with Chief Patterson's physical description. We'll need dental records for positive identification, but preliminary examination shows evidence of blunt force trauma to the skull. Consistent with an axe wound? Very consistent. I'll have a full report within 48 hours. While the recovery team worked, Martinez received a call from the district attorney's office. "Detective, we need to move fast on Vincent Burke. Word is spreading about Walsh's arrest, and Burke's been seen loading his car with suitcases." Martinez cursed under her breath. "We're on our way." She and Chen raced back to town, arriving at Burke's Oak Street home to find his driveway empty. A neighbor reported seeing Burke leave 2 hours earlier with several large bags. "APB on Vincent Burke," Martinez radioed dispatch. 73-year-old white male, possibly driving a silver Toyota Camry. Consider him a flight risk in connection with murder charges. Chen was already on the phone with Burke's bank. His savings account was emptied this morning. Withdrawal of $87,000. "Offshore money," Martinez said. "He's running with whatever he could access quickly." They searched Burke's house with a warrant, finding evidence he'd hastily packed. But in his basement office, they discovered a filing cabinet he'd apparently overlooked. Inside were documents dating back to 1989. Correspondence with Mayor Jameson about the warehouse fires, bank statements showing the kickback payments, and contracts with the shell companies Harold Kramer had incorporated. Most significantly, they found a handwritten letter dated October 16, 1989, the day after Chief Patterson's murder. "Harold, Walsh handled the Patterson problem. Need all company records destroyed immediately. Destroy this letter after reading. VB." Martinez photographed the letter. "Direct evidence Burke knew about the murder and helped cover it up." Her radio crackled. "Detective Martinez, we have eyes on Burke's vehicle. He's southbound on Interstate 75, approximately 60 miles from the Florida border. State Police? Already notified. Florida Highway Patrol is setting up roadblocks." 2 hours later, Burke was arrested at a rest stop near Gainesville. In his car, police found $87,000 in cash, false identification documents, and airline tickets to Costa Rica, a non-extradition country. Back in Brookfield, news of the arrests spread quickly. The local newspaper ran a special edition with the headline, "Fire Chief Murders Solved After 16 Years." Martinez met with Chief Patterson's widow, Sarah Patterson Hayes, who had remarried and lived in Portland, Oregon. She had flown to Brookfield immediately upon hearing about the arrests. "Detective Martinez, I always knew Bill didn't abandon his family. He loved us too much, and he was too dedicated to his job." Sarah was 58 now, with silver hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of years of uncertainty and grief. "What exactly happened to my husband?" Martinez explained the insurance fraud scheme and Walsh's confession. Sarah listened without interruption, occasionally wiping tears from her eyes. "Bill always said corruption was like cancer. If you didn't cut it out completely, it would spread and kill everything healthy around it. He died trying to protect the community he served." Sarah nodded. "That sounds like Bill. Can I see where you found him?" Martinez drove Sarah to the quarry where crime scene tape still marked the recovery area. Sarah stood silently at the water's edge for several minutes. 16 years I wondered if he was alive somewhere, maybe with amnesia or starting a new life. Part of me hoped he was happy, even if it meant he'd left us." "He never left you, Mrs. Patterson Hayes. He was murdered because he refused to compromise his principles." Sarah turned to face Martinez. "What happens now?" Walsh will plead guilty to second-degree murder. He's cooperating fully and will likely receive a sentence of 20 to 25 years. Burke faces charges as an accessory to murder and conspiracy. He'll probably get 15 to 20 years. And the money they stole? We're working with federal authorities to recover whatever assets remain. Any restitution will go to the city and Chief Patterson's family. As they drove back to town, Sarah asked about her husband's final investigation. Martinez showed her copies of the documents Tommy Rodriguez had discovered. "Bill was always thorough. He documented everything methodically. His evidence is what allowed us to solve the case. Without those hidden documents, we might never have known the truth." Sarah smiled for the first time since arriving in Brookfield. Bill would be pleased to know his work helped expose the corruption, even 16 years later. That evening, Martinez attended a city council meeting where Mayor Jennifer Collins, Jameson's successor, addressed the community about the Patterson case. The actions of former city officials do not reflect the values of Brookfield. We will implement new oversight procedures to ensure nothing like this can happen again. After the meeting, Tommy Rodriguez approached Martinez. "Detective, I'm glad we found those documents. Chief Patterson deserved justice. You did the right thing by calling us immediately. A lesser person might have just thrown everything away. I keep thinking about his letter. He knew he was in danger, but he was going to do the right thing anyway." Martinez nodded. That's the kind of man Chief Patterson was. That's why his killers had to stop him. As she drove home, Martinez reflected on the case. Fire Chief William Patterson had died because he refused to be corrupted. His murder had been covered up by people he trusted, and his family had suffered 16 years of uncertainty and pain. But justice, though delayed, had finally been served. The truth was revealed, the killers arrested, and Chief Patterson's reputation restored. Tomorrow would bring the ongoing work of preparing for trial and helping the Patterson family find closure. But tonight, Martinez felt the satisfaction of keeping faith with a murdered man who had died trying to do the right thing. In Brookfield, the fire station that had been Chief Patterson's second home would soon be demolished. But his legacy, a commitment to integrity and public service, would endure long after the building was gone. Trials and revelations. 6 months later, the murder trial of Robert Walsh began at the Brookfield County Courthouse. The media attention was intense. A beloved fire chief murdered by his own assistant, a conspiracy involving city officials, and a cover-up that lasted 16 years. Detective Martinez took the witness stand on the second day of trial. She methodically presented the evidence. The hidden documents Tommy Rodriguez had discovered, Walsh's confession, the recovery of Chief Patterson's remains, and the financial records showing the insurance fraud scheme. "Detective Martinez," the prosecutor asked, "in your opinion, why did Robert Walsh kill Fire Chief Patterson?" Chief Patterson had gathered evidence proving the warehouse fires were arson, and the insurance claims were fraudulent. He was going to expose the entire conspiracy to state authorities. Walsh and his co-conspirators couldn't allow that to happen. The defense attorney tried to portray the killing as a crime of passion rather than premeditated murder. "Detective, didn't Mr. Walsh tell you this was an accident during an argument?" Walsh grabbed a fire axe and struck Chief Patterson in the head with it. Whether he planned to kill him that specific night, he certainly intended to cause serious bodily harm. Walsh himself testified for 3 hours, describing the insurance fraud scheme and the events of October 15, 1989. He broke down several times, especially when describing the moment he struck Chief Patterson. "I never meant for it to go that far. Chief Patterson was like a father to me. But when he said he was going to destroy everything we'd worked for, I lost control." The prosecutor pressed him on the cover-up. "Mr. Walsh, you didn't call for medical assistance after striking Chief Patterson. Instead, you called Mayor Jameson. Why?" "Because I knew Chief Patterson was dead, and I was terrified. Jameson said we could make it look like the chief had left town voluntarily." "And you went along with this plan?" Walsh nodded. "We moved his body to the quarry and staged the scene at the bus station. Then I removed the blood-stained axe from police evidence and hid it back at the fire station." Sarah Patterson Hayes testified about her husband's character and dedication to his family and job. "Bill would never have abandoned us. He was investigating something in his final weeks, staying late at the office, making phone calls, asking unusual questions. I knew something was wrong." The jury deliberated for 6 hours before returning a verdict of guilty on second-degree murder charges. Walsh was sentenced to 23 years in prison. Vincent Burke's trial began 2 weeks later. Now 74 and using a walker, Burke presented a sympathetic figure, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. Harold Kramer testified about incorporating the shell companies and the October 1989 phone call ordering him to destroy records. Burke specifically told me Walsh handled the Patterson problem. I understood this to mean Chief Patterson had been killed. The letter Martinez had found in Burke's basement was particularly damaging. Burke's own handwriting referred to the Patterson problem and ordered destruction of evidence. Burke's defense was that he'd had no knowledge of the plan to kill Chief Patterson and had only learned of the murder after the fact. His attorney argued he was guilty of fraud and conspiracy, but not accessory to murder. Detective Chen testified about Burke's attempted flight to Costa Rica. Mr. Burke emptied his bank accounts, obtained false identification, and was arrested 60 miles from an international flight to a non-extradition country. This demonstrates consciousness of guilt. The prosecutor argued Burke was an equal partner in the conspiracy who helped plan the cover-up. Vincent Burke benefited from Chief Patterson's death by helping hide the murder and continuing to profit from the insurance fraud. Burke took the stand in his own defense, portraying himself as a minor player manipulated by the more powerful Mayor Jameson. "I never wanted anyone to get hurt. When I learned what Walsh had done, I was horrified. Then why didn't you contact authorities? Jameson said we'd all go to prison for the insurance fraud. He convinced me staying quiet was the only way to protect our families." The jury was less sympathetic to Burke than Walsh's jury had been. They found him guilty of accessory to murder, conspiracy, and fraud. He was sentenced to 18 years in prison. During the sentencing phase, Sarah Patterson Hayes addressed both men. "You took my husband from his children when they needed him most. You took away 16 years we could have grieved properly and moved forward with our lives. But you couldn't take away Bill's integrity or the truth about who he really was." The civil proceedings that followed resulted in significant financial settlements for the Patterson family. The city of Brookfield settled for $2.8 million, while insurance companies recovered most of the fraudulently claimed funds from Burke's and Walsh's remaining assets. Mayor Collins implemented new oversight procedures for city contracts and insurance claims. "We must ensure public officials are held accountable and prevent corruption from taking root in our government." Tommy Rodriguez was recognized by the city council for his role in solving the case. "I just did what anyone should do when they find evidence of wrongdoing. Chief Patterson's courage in investigating this corruption should inspire all of us." Detective Martinez received commendations from both the state police and FBI for her investigation, but she remained focused on the human cost of the crimes. "This case reminded me that corruption isn't just about stealing money. It destroys families, undermines public trust, and sometimes leads to murder." Chief Patterson died because he refused to look the other way. The old fire station was finally demolished, but the city council voted to name the new facility the William Patterson Fire Station. A memorial plaque in the lobby honored his service and sacrifice. Frank Morrison, the original detective on the case, attended the dedication ceremony. Now in his 80s, he spoke about never forgetting Chief Patterson. "I always believed Bill Patterson was murdered, but I couldn't prove it. Detective Martinez and her team succeeded where I failed. Justice was delayed, but it was not denied." As the ceremony concluded, Martinez noticed Sarah Patterson Hayes standing quietly by the memorial plaque. She approached the widow, who was tracing her husband's name with her finger. "Mrs. Patterson Hayes, are you okay?" Sarah smiled through tears. "I'm at peace now. Bill's name is cleared, his killers are in prison, and his sacrifices remembered. After 16 years of uncertainty, that's enough." The Patterson case became a textbook study in cold case investigation and public corruption. Police departments across the country used it as training material, while government oversight agencies cited it as an example of why whistleblower protections are essential. But for Martinez, the real lesson was simpler. Sometimes the right thing to do is also the dangerous thing to do, and it takes courage to choose integrity over personal safety. Fire Chief William Patterson had made that choice in 1989 and paid with his life. 16 years later, the truth he died protecting had finally set his family free. The deeper conspiracy. 2 months after the trials concluded, Detective Martinez received an unexpected phone call. It was from Agent Lisa Parker of the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. "Detective Martinez, we've been reviewing the Patterson case files. We believe the Brookfield conspiracy may have been part of a larger pattern of municipal fraud in your region." Martinez met with Agent Parker at the federal building in the state capitol. Parker was in her 40s, with 20 years of experience investigating government corruption. We've identified similar insurance fraud schemes in 3 other cities between 1987 and 1992. Same pattern: suspicious warehouse fires, inflated damage claims, shell companies receiving construction contracts. Parker spread photographs across the conference table showing burned buildings in Riverside, Millfield, and Oakton, cities within 100 miles of Brookfield. In each case, fires occurred in empty warehouses scheduled for demolition. Insurance companies paid out millions in claims that appear to be fraudulent. Martinez studied the crime scene photos. Any connection to the Brookfield conspirators? That's what we need to determine. Harold Kramer, the lawyer who incorporated your shell companies, also has ties to attorneys in these other cities. Or, Parker pulled out a complex organizational chart. We believe there was a regional network of corrupt officials, lawyers, and insurance adjusters working together to defraud multiple companies. What about the other fire chiefs? Any suspicious deaths or disappearances? Parker's expression darkened. Fire Chief Robert Mills in Riverside died in a car accident in 1990. Single vehicle crash, ruled accidental, but it happened 3 days after he started asking questions about insurance procedures. Martinez felt a chill. And the others? Fire Chief David Torres in Millfield took early retirement in 1991 after suffering what was described as a nervous breakdown. Fire Chief Jennifer Walsh in Oakton, no relation to your Robert Walsh, transferred to a different state after reporting threats against her family. They were all getting too close to the truth. Parker nodded. Patterson was the only one who refused to back down, so they killed him. The others were either eliminated or scared into silence. Martinez reviewed the timeline. Who coordinated this regional network? We're still investigating, but evidence points to a Chicago-based insurance adjuster named Michael Torino. He handled claims in all 4 cities and may have recruited the local conspirators. Parker showed Martinez surveillance photographs of Torino from the early 1990s. He was in his 50s then, well-dressed and professional-looking. Torino disappeared in 1993, shortly after the schemes ended. We believe he fled to South America with millions in stolen money. Is he still alive? Unknown. But we've traced money transfers to banks in Argentina and Brazil. Someone using his identity has been accessing those accounts as recently as last year. Martinez realized the implications. If Torino is alive and we can find him, he might testify about the entire network. That's our hope. His testimony could expose corruption in multiple cities and help us understand the full scope of the conspiracy. Parker arranged for Martinez to interview the surviving fire chiefs who had been involved in the other cities. Chief Torres agreed to meet at a restaurant in Millfield, 30 miles from Brookfield. Torres was now in his 70s, retired and living on disability. He arrived at the restaurant nervous and constantly checking over his shoulder. "Detective, I've been expecting someone to contact me ever since I heard about the Patterson case on the news." "Hey, what can you tell me about the insurance fraud in Millfield?" Torres stirred his coffee with shaking hands. "Same pattern as Brookfield. Warehouse fires, inflated damage claims, money disappearing through fake construction contracts. Did you investigate?" "I started to. Found discrepancies in the damage reports, equipment that supposedly burned but was still in service. When I brought my concerns to Mayor Davidson, he told me to focus on fighting fires and leave insurance matters to the professionals." Martinez took notes as Torres continued. "But I kept digging. Found out the mayor and city council were getting kickbacks from the insurance money." "What happened when you confronted them?" Torres' face went pale. "I never got the chance. 3 days after I filed a report with the state fire marshal, I was driving home from work. My brakes failed on a steep hill. Crashed into a tree at 40 miles per hour. The accident that ended your career? That was no accident. Someone tampered with my brake lines. I spent 6 months in the hospital and never returned to duty." Martinez showed him the surveillance photo of Michael Torino. Torres recoiled immediately. "That's him. He came to Millfield several times in 1990 and 1991. Met privately with Mayor Davidson and the insurance agent who processed our claims." "Did you ever speak with Torino directly?" "Once. He introduced himself as a special investigator for the insurance company. Said he was reviewing our claims to ensure proper procedures were followed." "What was your impression?" Torres leaned forward. He wasn't investigating fraud. He was organizing it. The way he talked about maximizing recovery amounts, structuring claims for quick payment. He knew too much about the technical details. Martinez arranged to interview Chief Jennifer Walsh in Phoenix, where she had relocated after leaving Oakton. Walsh was in her early 60s, working as a fire safety consultant. "Detective, I've wondered for years if anyone would ever investigate what happened in our region. The Patterson murder confirmed my worst fears." Walsh explained that the Oakton conspiracy had followed the same pattern: warehouse fires, fraudulent insurance claims, and shell companies receiving construction contracts. "I discovered the scheme by accident, was reviewing budget reports and noticed discrepancies between our equipment inventory and insurance claims for damaged equipment." "How did the conspirators react when you started investigating?" "Mayor Hendricks called me into his office and told me I was being reassigned to administrative duties. No more involvement in fire scene investigations or insurance claims." Martinez took notes as Walsh continued. "When I refused to back down, I started receiving threatening phone calls. Someone vandalized my car. My children were followed home from school." "Did you recognize Michael Torino?" Walsh studied his photograph carefully. "Yes, but he used a different name in Oakton. Called himself Martin Torres, claimed to represent a consortium of insurance companies." "What did he tell you?" "That my investigation was interfering with legitimate insurance business. He offered me a promotion to fire marshal in another state if I would transfer immediately." "You took the transfer?" Walsh nodded sadly. "I was a single mother with 2 young children. After the threats escalated, I decided their safety was more important than exposing the corruption." Martinez understood the impossible position Walsh had been in. "Do you remember anything else about Torino that might help us locate him?" "He spoke with a slight accent, maybe Italian or Spanish, wore expensive suits, and drove a black BMW. And he was left-handed. I noticed when he signed papers." Agent Parker was pleased with the intelligence Martinez had gathered. "These interviews confirmed Torino was the central coordinator. Now we need to find him." "Or, what about the money trail?" Parker pulled out financial records. "We've traced approximately $8 million to accounts in Argentina. Someone has been making regular withdrawals, suggesting Torino is still alive and accessing the funds. Can we work with Argentine authorities?" "We're trying, but their cooperation has been limited. Argentina doesn't have an extradition treaty with the United States for financial crimes from the 1990s. Martinez studied the case files. "What about approaching this from the victim angle? The insurance companies lost millions of dollars. They might have resources we don't." Parker smiled. "Already ahead of you. We're working with private investigators hired by the insurance companies. They've been tracking Torino for years." The investigation was expanding beyond anything Martinez had imagined when Tommy Rodriguez first called about documents hidden in the old fire station. What had started as a single murder case was now revealing a multi-state conspiracy involving dozens of corrupt officials. But at its heart, the case remained about Fire Chief William Patterson, a man who had died because he refused to look the other way when he discovered corruption. His courage had ultimately exposed not just the Brookfield conspiracy, but a regional network of fraud and murder. As Martinez prepared for the next phase of the investigation, she thought about the other fire chiefs who had faced the same choice as Patterson. Most had chosen safety over justice, and she couldn't blame them. But Patterson's willingness to sacrifice his life for the truth had made all the difference. 16 years later, his investigation was still helping to expose corruption and bring criminals to justice. The search for Michael Torino would continue, but Patterson's legacy was already secure. He had proven that one honest person could make a difference, even at the ultimate cost. The final pursuit. 8 months into the federal investigation, Agent Parker received a breakthrough call from Buenos Aires. A private investigator working for the insurance companies had located someone matching Michael Torino's description, living in an exclusive neighborhood under the name Miguel Torres. "Detective Martinez, pack your bags. We're going to Argentina." Martinez had never imagined her investigation of Chief Patterson's murder would lead to South America, but she was determined to see it through to the end. They arrived in Buenos Aires on a humid February morning. The city was vast and chaotic, with modern skyscrapers rising alongside colonial architecture. Their contact was Agent Carlos Mendoza of the Argentine Federal Police, who met them at the airport. Senor Torres has been living quietly in Palermo for 12 years. He owns a small art gallery and keeps a low profile. Our surveillance suggests he matches your suspect's description and age. They drove through busy streets to the neighborhood where Torino allegedly lived. The address was an elegant apartment building near several parks and museums. "How do we approach this?" Martinez asked. "He's not going to confess voluntarily." Agent Parker had been developing strategy during the flight. "We pose as art collectors interested in his gallery. Get him talking. See if we can identify him positively before revealing who we are." The gallery occupied the ground floor of a converted mansion. Through the windows, they could see paintings covering the walls and sculpture displayed on pedestals. A silver-haired man in an expensive suit was speaking with customers. Martinez studied him carefully. He was in his 70s now, but still fit and alert. His left hand held a cigarette, consistent with Jennifer Walsh's observation that Torino was left-handed. They entered the gallery and browsed casually. The artwork was high quality, mostly Latin American painters and sculptors. The man approached them with a professional smile. "Good afternoon. I am Miguel Torres, owner of this gallery. Are you interested in anything particular?" His English was excellent, with only a slight accent. Martinez pretended to examine a painting while studying his face. Despite the years and plastic surgery, she could see similarities to the surveillance photos from the 1990s. "We're from the United States," Parker said, "visiting Buenos Aires on vacation. A friend recommended your gallery." Torres' expression flickered slightly at mention of the United States, but he maintained his composure. "Your friend has excellent taste. May I ask who recommended us?" "Actually," Martinez said, "we're not art collectors. We're law enforcement officers investigating insurance fraud that occurred in the United States during the 1990s. Torres froze, his cigarette halfway to his mouth. For a moment Martinez thought he might run, but then his shoulders sagged in resignation. "I wondered when this day would come. 24 years is a long time to look over your shoulder." Agent Mendoza stepped forward and identified himself in Spanish. Torres nodded understanding and switched to Spanish for a brief exchange. "Senor Torres has agreed to speak with you voluntarily," Mendoza translated, "but he wants immunity from prosecution in exchange for his testimony." They moved to a private office behind the gallery. Torres poured himself a glass of wine with shaking hands before beginning his story. "My real name is Michael Anthony Torino. I was an insurance adjuster in Chicago for 15 years before I developed the regional fraud scheme." He explained how he had identified vulnerable cities with aging infrastructure and recruited corrupt officials to participate in the conspiracy. "The warehouse fires were set by a professional arsonist I hired from Detroit. We targeted empty buildings scheduled for demolition, so no one would be hurt." Martinez took detailed notes as Torino described the operation. "The local conspirators would file inflated damage claims for fire department equipment. I would approve the claims quickly to avoid scrutiny." "How much money was stolen total?" "Approximately $12 million over 5 years. I kept 60%. The local conspirators split the rest." Parker asked about Chief Patterson's murder. Torino's face darkened. "I never authorized violence. When Walsh called to say Patterson was asking questions, I told them to shut down the Brookfield operation immediately. But they killed him instead." Walsh panicked. He said Patterson had gathered evidence that could expose the entire network. Mayor Jameson decided Patterson had to be eliminated. Martinez leaned forward. "Did you know about the murder plan?" "Not specifically. Jameson called me the night before it happened, said they were going to handle the Patterson problem permanently. I assumed he meant transferring him or bribing him to stay quiet." "When did you learn Chief Patterson had been killed?" "Walsh called me the next morning and confessed what he'd done. I was horrified. The scheme was supposed to be non-violent, insurance fraud, not murder." Torino described how he'd immediately begun planning his own escape. "I knew if they'd killed one fire chief, they might eliminate anyone else who could expose them." "Including you?" "Nay, especially me. I was the only person who could identify all the participants in multiple cities." Parker asked about the other fire chiefs. What happened to Robert Mills in Riverside? Torino's voice dropped to a whisper. Mills was getting close to the truth. Mayor Richardson decided to eliminate him before he could expose the conspiracy. You're saying Mills was murdered too? At Burnley, his brake lines were cut. The car crash was staged to look accidental. Martinez felt sick. 2 fire chiefs murdered for trying to expose corruption. Why didn't you come forward then? Because I would have been the next target. These people had already killed twice to protect their secret. Torino explained that he'd fled to Argentina in 1993 using false identity documents purchased in Chicago. I've been Miguel Torres ever since, built a legitimate business, tried to make amends by living an honest life. Agent Parker began negotiating immunity terms. Mr. Torino, your testimony could help us prosecute surviving conspirators in multiple cities. Are you willing to return to the United States as a witness? Torino considered the offer carefully. If I testify, will you guarantee my safety? Some of these people may still be alive and dangerous. The FBI will provide witness protection if necessary. After 6 hours of discussion, Torino agreed to cooperate fully. He would return to the United States, provide detailed testimony about the regional conspiracy, and help identify any remaining participants. Martinez called Sarah Patterson Hayes to inform her of the development. Mrs. Patterson Hayes, we found the man who coordinated the conspiracy that led to your husband's murder. Will he face justice? He's agreed to testify against the others in exchange for immunity. Without his testimony, we might never expose the full extent of the corruption. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Bill always said the law sometimes requires difficult compromises. If this man's testimony can prevent future corruption, Bill would approve. The return to the United States took 3 weeks to arrange. Torino had to settle his affairs in Buenos Aires and coordinate with Argentine authorities regarding his immigration status. During this time, FBI agents in Chicago reopened investigations into the suspicious deaths and disappearances that had occurred during the 1990s fraud scheme. Armed with Torino's testimony, they began building cases against surviving conspirators. Martinez accompanied Torino on the flight back to the United States. Despite his cooperation, she struggled with the fact that the mastermind of the conspiracy would likely avoid prison, while lesser participants like Walsh and Burke served long sentences. "Detective," Torino said during the flight, "I know you think I'm getting away with murder, but I've been in prison for 24 years. A prison of fear and exile. That doesn't bring back Chief Patterson or Robert Mills. No, it doesn't. But maybe my testimony can prevent other honest officials from being killed for doing their jobs." Martinez understood the pragmatic necessity of the immunity deal, but it still felt like incomplete justice. Chief Patterson had died because he refused to compromise his principles. Now the system was asking her to compromise hers in service of a greater good. As their plane descended toward Chicago, Martinez thought about the long journey from Tommy Rodriguez's discovery in an abandoned fire station to this moment. Chief Patterson's hidden documents had exposed not just a local conspiracy, but a regional network of corruption that had claimed multiple lives. The investigation would continue for months as federal prosecutors built cases against the surviving conspirators. But Martinez knew the most important victory had already been achieved. The truth about Chief Patterson's death had been revealed, and his reputation for integrity was permanently restored. Sometimes justice required difficult choices and imperfect solutions. But in the end, Chief Patterson's courage had prevailed over the corruption that killed him. Justice and legacy. 6 months later, Martinez sat in a federal courtroom in Chicago, watching Michael Torino testify against the last of the regional conspirators. His detailed testimony had already led to convictions of 12 corrupt officials across 4 cities. The final defendant was former Mayor Paul Richardson of Riverside, charged with ordering the murder of Fire Chief Robert Mills. Richardson was 79 years old, confined to a wheelchair, but still defiant. The witness is a confessed criminal who has received immunity in exchange for his testimony, Richardson's attorney argued. His word cannot be trusted. But Torino's testimony was supported by extensive documentary evidence, bank records, insurance claims, contracts with shell companies, and recorded phone conversations the FBI had discovered in Richardson's personal files. "Mr. Torino," the prosecutor asked, "did Mayor Richardson specifically order the murder of Fire Chief Mills?" "Yes. He called me in November 1990 and said Mills was asking too many questions about the warehouse fires. He said, 'We need to handle this like Chicago handles problems, permanently.'" "What did you understand that to mean?" "That Chief Mills would be killed, just like Chief Patterson had been killed in Brookfield." Richardson was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder and sentenced to life in prison. At his age and health condition, it was effectively a death sentence. As the trial concluded, Martinez reflected on the scope of justice achieved. Robert Walsh was serving 23 years for Patterson's murder. Vincent Burke had died in prison the previous year, his appeals exhausted. A dozen other corrupt officials were serving sentences ranging from 10 to 25 years. Most significantly, the insurance companies had recovered over $8 million in restitution, with additional funds going to the families of murdered fire chiefs. Sarah Patterson Hayes attended Richardson's sentencing. Afterward, she approached Martinez in the courthouse hallway. "Detective, Bill would be proud of what you've accomplished. You've exposed a conspiracy that cost several good men their lives. Your husband's courage started this investigation. His hidden documents were the key to everything." Sarah smiled sadly. "Bill always said the truth has a way of surviving, even when people try to bury it." They walked outside together into the Chicago afternoon. The federal courthouse was busy with attorneys and defendants, journalists and families, the machinery of justice grinding forward. "What will you do now?" Martinez asked. "Return to Portland and try to move forward. My children have closure about their father's death." "That's enough." Martinez watched Sarah disappear into the crowd, thinking about the price of corruption. Chief Patterson had died at 45, leaving 3 teenagers without a father. Robert Mills had been killed at 52, survived by a wife and twin daughters. The human cost of greed was incalculable. Back in Brookfield, the community was still processing the revelations about their former city officials. Mayor Collins had implemented new transparency requirements for all municipal contracts and hired an independent auditor to review city finances. "The Patterson case taught us that corruption thrives in secrecy," Collins said at a city council meeting. "We're committed to ensuring our government operates in the sunlight." The William Patterson Fire Station had been completed and was operational. Chief Martinez, no relation to Detective Martinez, had instituted new training programs emphasizing ethical leadership and corruption prevention. "We teach our firefighters that public service is a sacred trust," Chief Martinez said. Chief Patterson died defending that principle. Tommy Rodriguez had used his reward money from the insurance companies to expand his auto repair business. He hired 3 new mechanics and moved to a larger facility, but he kept the original shop as a reminder of the day he'd found the hidden lockbox. "Sometimes doing the right thing changes everything," he told a reporter. Chief Patterson knew that when he hid those documents. Detective Martinez received promotion to sergeant and was assigned to lead the department's new white-collar crime unit. Her success on the Patterson case had earned recognition throughout law enforcement, but she remained focused on the human element of corruption investigations. "Financial crimes aren't victimless," she told new detectives during training. "They destroy families, undermine communities, and sometimes lead to murder." Michael Torino completed his testimony obligations and entered witness protection. His art gallery in Buenos Aires was sold, with proceeds going to the families of the murdered fire chiefs. He would spend his remaining years under a new identity, protected but forever in exile. Harold Kramer, the lawyer who had incorporated the shell companies, was disbarred and sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. His cooperation had been valuable, but his role in enabling the conspiracy couldn't be ignored. "The legal profession has a special responsibility to uphold the law," the judge said during sentencing. "Your abuse of that trust enabled murder and corruption." As the investigations concluded, Martinez took time to visit Chief Patterson's grave. The headstone now accurately reflected his death date, October 15, 1989, instead of the previous missing designation. Fresh flowers covered the grave. Martinez fresh flowers covered the grave. Martinez knelt and placed her own bouquet next to the others. White lilies, Chief Patterson's favorite according to his widow. "Chief, your investigation finally got finished," she said quietly. "Took 16 years, but we got them all." The cemetery was peaceful in the afternoon sun. Other graves nearby belonged to firefighters and police officers who had died in the line of duty. Chief Patterson's sacrifice now had its proper place among them. Martinez's phone buzzed with a text from Agent Parker. "Just received word. Argentina has seized Torino's remaining assets. Additional $3.2 million recovered for victim compensation fund." Even in witness protection, Torino continued to pay for his crimes. Justice might be delayed and imperfect, but it was persistent. Driving back through downtown Brookfield, Martinez passed the construction site where the old fire station once stood. The new William Patterson Fire Station was gleaming red brick and modern glass, with the memorial plaque prominently displayed by the main entrance. Children from the local elementary school were touring the facility. Martinez watched them climb on the fire trucks and try on oversized helmets, their faces bright with excitement. One little girl asked the tour guide, "Who was Chief Patterson?" "He was a very brave man who protected our community. He made sure firefighters always did the right thing, even when it was dangerous." The child nodded seriously. "Like a superhero?" "Exactly like a superhero." Martinez smiled at the exchange. Chief Patterson's legacy was secure, not just as a victim of corruption, but as a symbol of integrity and courage. That evening, Martinez wrote her final report on the Patterson investigation. The case file now contained over 2,000 pages of evidence, testimony, and analysis. Future investigators studying government corruption would find a complete record of how greed and power could destroy lives, and how persistence could eventually expose the truth. But the most important document in the file remained Chief Patterson's handwritten letter, discovered in Tommy Rodriguez's hidden lockbox. "If something happens to me, know that I tried to stop them. The insurance money from the warehouse fires isn't going where it should. Mayor Jameson and Councilman Burke are stealing from the city. I have proof. They know I know. Sarah, if you're reading this, I love you. Tell the kids their father fought for what was right. Bill." 16 years later, those words had brought down a multi-state conspiracy and delivered justice for multiple murder victims. Chief Patterson's courage in writing that letter, even knowing the danger he faced, had made all the difference. Martinez closed the case file and locked it in her desk drawer. Tomorrow would bring new investigations, new crimes to solve, new victims seeking justice. But tonight, she felt the satisfaction of completing the work Chief Patterson had started in 1989. The fire station was quiet now, its red trucks gleaming under fluorescent lights. Somewhere in the building, tonight's duty crew was sleeping, ready to respond to emergencies at a moment's notice. They served a community that had learned the price of corruption and the value of integrity. Chief William Patterson had died trying to protect that community from thieves and murderers disguised as public servants. His sacrifice had seemed meaningless for 16 years, his family left with questions and uncertainty. But time had a way of revealing truth and delivering justice. The documents he'd hidden in his office floor had ultimately exposed his killers and restored his reputation. The man who died for doing the right thing had finally been vindicated. As Martinez drove home through streets Chief Patterson had once patrolled in his red pickup truck, she thought about the lesson his story taught. Corruption might triumph temporarily, but integrity endured forever. The fire chief who disappeared in 1989 had never really been gone at all. He lived on in the honest public servants who followed his example, in the oversight procedures implemented to prevent future fraud, and in the community that now understood the true cost of looking the other way. 16 years after his murder, Fire Chief William Patterson had finally come home, not in body, but in spirit and legacy. His fight for justice was over, and he had won. The investigation that began with a mechanic's discovery in an abandoned building had revealed the truth about power, corruption, and courage. Sometimes the good guys did win in the end, even when justice took decades to arrive. In Brookfield, The memorial plaque at the fire station would remind future generations that one honest man's refusal to be corrupted had made all the difference. Chief Patterson's story would be told and retold, inspiring others to choose integrity over expediency, truth over comfort. The case was closed, but the legacy endured. Detective Martinez had kept faith with a murdered man and his grieving family. Justice, though long delayed, had finally been served. Fire Chief William Patterson could rest in peace. The end. Epilogue. 2 years later, Detective Martinez received a letter from Sarah Patterson Hayes. She had established the William Patterson Foundation, providing scholarships for children of public safety officers and funding ethics training for government employees. Bill's death taught us that integrity requires courage, the letter read. We want to help others find that courage before it's too late. The Foundation's first scholarship recipient was Tommy Rodriguez's daughter, Maria, who planned to study criminal justice. Sometimes justice created circles of hope that extended far beyond the original crime. In Brookfield, the William Patterson Fire Station continued to serve the community with distinction. New recruits learned about their namesake's sacrifice and took oaths to uphold his example of ethical service. The case remained a model for cold case investigations and public corruption prosecutions. Detective Martinez's methodical approach and Agent Parker's federal resources had created a template for exposing complex criminal conspiracies. But most importantly, Chief Patterson's family finally had peace. His children, now adults with families of their own, could tell their own children about their grandfather's heroism without the shadow of uncertainty that had haunted them for 16 years. The truth had indeed survived, just as Chief Patterson believed it would. His faith in justice had been vindicated, his sacrifice honored, and his memory preserved for future generations. Sometimes the best investigations were those that restored not just legal justice, but human dignity and family honor. The Patterson case had achieved both, proving that no matter how long it took, the truth would eventually emerge. Lacey Fire. Chief William Patterson's watch had ended, but his legacy of courage and integrity would endure forever.